The sky above planet Marin was filled with gray clouds. The air was cold and silent. On a high cliff stood a tall silver building. Inside, soldiers of the Thaleri Empire walked with strict steps. Their leader, Commander Alira, stood at the control desk. She had sharp eyes and a calm face. She never smiled, and her voice was always steady. Alira looked at the screen. A strange signal had been found near the mountain ridge. One of her soldiers came forward and spoke in a clear voice. "A ship has crashed. It is not Thaleri. It came from Earth." Alira raised one eyebrow. Earth was not a threat to the Thaleri. Humans were loud, emotional, and unorganized. Still, a crash meant someone was alive. She gave a simple order. "Bring the pilot here. Alive." The soldier saluted and left. Hours passed. The wind grew stronger outside. Then the doors opened. 2 guards entered with a man between them. His clothes were torn. His left arm had a deep wound wrapped in cloth. But he stood tall, eyes straight, even when weak. He looked around the room without fear. Alira stepped forward. "Name," she said in a cold tone. The man answered calmly. "Captain Ryan, Earth Exploration Team." Alira looked into his eyes. Most prisoners were nervous. This one was not. His face was calm. His hands were tied, but he looked like he had already won something. "You are far from home," Alira said. "I was on a peaceful mission," Ryan replied. "Your defense system hit my ship." Alira ignored the comment. She turned to her guards. "Take him to the holding room. I will question him later." Ryan was led away. As he walked out, he glanced back at her, not with anger, not with fear, with curiosity, like he wanted to understand her. That look stayed in Alira's mind for longer than she expected. The holding room was small. Metal walls, 1 bed, no windows. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, arm still hurting. A young guard named Len watched him through the door glass. Ryan gave a short nod. "Hello," he said simply. Len didn't answer at first, then slowly replied, "You should rest." "I will," said Ryan. "Thank you for not hurting me." Len looked confused. He had never heard a prisoner thank a guard before. Later that evening, Alira entered the room. 2 guards stood behind her. Ryan stood up slowly. He did not salute. He simply waited. Alira asked questions about his mission, his ship, his team. But Ryan gave short answers, not lies, just not much. Then he asked her something. "Why are you at war with Earth?" Alira blinked. "We are not at war. You entered our space." "My mission had no weapons," Ryan said. "We came to learn, to explore." Alira was silent. She had heard of human exploration teams. Earth sent them to many planets. But Thaleri, records showed them as careless and weak. "You expect me to believe your people are harmless?" she asked. "No," Ryan said. "But we are not your enemy unless you make us one." There was no threat in his voice, just truth. Alira ended the talk, but as she walked out, she felt something strange. She had spoken to many prisoners before. None stayed in her mind after the door closed, but Ryan did. In the next few days, Ryan was kept under watch. His wound was treated. He followed the rules. He spoke politely to guards. He didn't shout or complain. Instead, he asked questions. He asked about the Thaleri food, their sky, their customs. He listened with care. The guards began to like him. One evening, during a storm, the power flickered. Lights dimmed across the station. In the control room, a small reactor error appeared. A junior officer panicked. Systems started to overheat. Alira ran to the panel, trying to stabilize the core. Suddenly, a voice spoke behind her. "You need to reroute the second coil. Otherwise, it will overheat." She turned. Ryan had been brought to the room during the alert. He had studied Thaleri systems during his days in the room. His words were correct. Alira gave the order. The core cooled down. The danger passed. Everyone was quiet. Ryan stepped back and said, "Glad I could help." For the first time, Alira did not feel like he was her prisoner. He had just saved her station. Later, Alira sat in her private room. She turned on the screen and played one of Ryan's device files. It showed green forests, rain falling, people laughing near a fire. Music played in the background, human music, so full of life, so free. She did not understand it, but she wanted to. Something inside her had started to change. The next morning, soft white light entered through the control hall windows. The storm had passed, but inside Commander Alira's mind, another storm was still building. She had watched the human's memory file again during the night. The music echoed in her head even when the screen was off. The laughter from the humans in the video stayed with her longer than she expected. Alira stood before the mirror in her room. Her face was calm as always, but her thoughts were not. She picked up her badge, fixed her collar, and walked out with firm steps. She had a job to do. Ryan was already awake. He sat in the holding room, reading the markings on the wall with quiet interest. When Alira entered, he stood slowly and nodded. "Good morning, Commander," he said politely. "You seem calm," Alira replied. "I'm alive," he said, "and your people treated my wound. That's something to be thankful for." Alira sat across from him. A small table stood between them. No guards were inside the room, only the quiet sound of machines humming in the background. "I want to know more about your mission," she said. "I already told you," Ryan replied. "Exploration, not invasion." "Earth always says that," Alira said. "But then you build outposts. You spread your kind across new planets." "We explore," Ryan said, his voice calm. "We study. We ask questions. Sometimes we stay, but not as rulers. We try to learn." Alira looked at him closely. His words were not meant to trick her. They were simple, honest. That made her pause. "Why learn?" she asked. Ryan smiled slightly. "Because there's always more to understand." That smile caught her attention. It was not mocking. It was peaceful. It was the kind of expression no Thaleri officer would wear during questioning. Their world trained them to hide emotion, not show it. Ryan leaned forward. "Let me ask you something, Commander. When was the last time you sat and watched a sunset?" Alira frowned. "That is not important." "It is to me," he said. "On Earth, people stop to watch the sky change colors. We sit quietly. Not because it's useful, but because it's beautiful." Alira stayed silent. She had never thought about sunsets like that. To her, the sky was either clear or stormy. Useful or not, there was no time for feelings. "You're trying to distract me," she said. "No," Ryan replied. "I'm trying to share something." Alira stood and walked to the door. Before she left, she turned and asked, "Why are you not afraid?" Ryan met her eyes. "Because fear gives control to others. I choose not to give that away." That answer stayed with her the rest of the day. Later that evening, Alira called for her assistant. "Bring me the human's device again," she said. She opened more files, videos, pictures, sounds. One video showed people dancing in the rain. Another showed children chasing flying lights during a festival. There was no reason behind the actions. Only joy. Thaleri culture was not like this. Every action had purpose. Every word had weight. Fun was seen as wasteful. Emotion was shown only in private. But here was a human who smiled even when captured, who offered help even while injured, who watched sunsets and danced in the rain. Why? The next day, Alira brought Ryan to the learning hall. It was an open space with displays, maps, and language tools. She told the guards to stand back and let him walk freely inside. "You may learn our language symbols," she said. "It will help you speak better with my officers." Ryan looked surprised but nodded. "Thank you." He spent the next few hours reading Thaleri letters and practicing the sounds. Alira watched from a distance. He learned quickly. She noticed how he smiled when he understood something new, how he asked polite questions, how he laughed softly, when he made a mistake and corrected it without shame. One guard whispered, "He's not like the others we've caught before." Alira nodded slowly. That night, Alira visited the reactor room. One engineer came forward and said, "The humans' advice helped us fix a weak connection. Without that, we might have faced a breakdown." Alira only gave a quiet reply. "I see." She walked through the quiet halls of the station. Lights above hummed softly. Every step she took echoed. For the first time, she felt unsure about the teachings of her world. Could the Empire be wrong about humans? Could she? 2 days later, she returned to Ryan's room. "I want to ask about Earth," she said. Ryan smiled and sat down. "I thought you'd never ask." He spoke of Earth's many lands, of wide oceans and high mountains, of birds that sing at sunrise, of people who argue, love, dream, and build. He told her about a place called a library, a place full of books, where people go just to learn. "Some read for answers," he said. "Some read for fun." "Fun?" Alira asked. "Yes," Ryan said. "Stories that take you to new worlds, even while sitting still." Alira listened quietly. She had never heard learning described as joy. He spoke about music, how it could make a person cry or dance. He told her about how humans painted pictures to express feelings, how they wrote poems with no purpose except to touch hearts. When he finished, Alira felt silent inside, like something inside her was slowly opening. "You speak like your world is perfect," she said at last. Ryan shook his head. "It's not. We have mistakes, we fight, we struggle, but we try to grow. That's what makes us human." That night, Alira sat in her room with no screen on, no reports, no orders, only silence. She looked at the stars through the glass window. For the first time, she wondered what it would feel like to sit and watch them, not for duty, but for beauty. The days passed slowly on the Thaleri station. Each morning felt the same. The same sound of metal boots, the same cold air inside the halls. But something had begun to change. It was not loud. It did not come with alarm or noise. It was quiet. It started in the smallest places, in small looks, in small thoughts, and it had started with Ryan. Commander Alira noticed it first in the guard named Len. He now spoke to the human with ease. He even smiled sometimes. Ryan had learned many Thaleri words. He asked about their food, their games, even the stories told to young ones. Len answered happily, proud to share. Other guards started joining in. They talked about simple things, like the weather outside or the taste of spice leaves in tea. Ryan listened with care, and that made them feel seen. Alira watched all this from her command deck. She said nothing, but she noticed. One afternoon, during a learning session in the common room, Ryan asked Alira a strange question. "What do you dream about?" Alira was surprised. "Dreams are not discussed in Thaleri culture." "Why not?" Ryan asked. "They are not useful," she said. Ryan leaned back in his chair. "Dreams are not always useful. Sometimes they are just pieces of the soul floating, free." Alira was silent for a moment. Then she looked out the window. "When I was young," she said slowly, "I had one dream. I dreamed I was flying. Not in a ship, just me. No noise, no orders, just the sky." Ryan smiled. That's a good dream. Alira looked at him. I forgot it until now. Later that evening, Alira opened Ryan's device again. She watched a short video of two people singing on a hill. Their voices were not perfect, but they were filled with feeling. There was a child clapping nearby. A dog barked in the distance. Nothing was planned, nothing was controlled, and yet it was beautiful. Alira turned off the screen and sat in silence. She had led missions. She had written reports. She had spoken before the High Council, but she had never sung on a hill. She had never even thought about it. The next day, news arrived from the Thaliri High Council. A message was sent to Alira's station. Prepare the prisoner for transfer. He will be moved to Central Command in 2 days. Alira read the message again. Her hand tightened around the tablet. She did not like the feeling that came with it. She went to the lower levels where Ryan was working with the engineers. He was fixing a broken sensor. The same sensor that once scanned his ship. Now he was helping it work again. She called him aside. They are taking you away, she said. Ryan paused. Where? Central Command, she replied. Ryan nodded. I thought they might. Alira looked at him. Why are you not angry? Because I expected it, he said. I knew the day would come. There was a pause. You changed things. Here, she said. You let it happen, Ryan replied. They stood in silence. That night, Alira sat in her quarters. She thought about the first day she met Ryan. He was a prisoner, a human, an outsider. Now she was not sure what he was. She only knew that the station felt different since he arrived. She walked to the window. The stars outside were brighter than usual. Or maybe her eyes had changed. The next morning, an alert rang through the station. It was not a threat. It was a signal. A Thaliri scout ship had sent a new data packet. It showed signs of Earth ships near the border. Nothing dangerous. Just exploration teams. Alira reviewed the report. The ships were peaceful, but the Council had marked them for close watch. She looked at the screen and thought about Ryan, about his words, about his stories. She closed the file and walked out. Later that day, Ryan was allowed one last walk around the station. Alira walked beside him. This might be my last walk on Marin, Ryan said. I didn't plan for it to end this way, she replied. I know, Ryan said, but I'm glad I came here, even like this. Alira looked at him. You don't belong in a prison, Ryan. Ryan gave a soft smile. Then help me stay out of one. They walked past the garden room where dry plants were growing again, past the learning hall where Ryan had spoken about books, past the open window where he once watched the stars. They said nothing more, but the silence between them was full of meaning. That night, Alira stood before the Council's message again. She read it one last time. Then she made a choice. She opened a private channel. It connected to a hidden room deep inside the station. One trusted engineer answered the call. I need your help, Alira said. The engineer looked surprised. With, what? I need to delay the transfer, she said. The engineer hesitated. That's not standard procedure. I know, Alira said. But this is not a standard man. In the next few hours, small things began to shift. The ship meant to take Ryan had a sudden fault. The docking bay lights needed replacement. The travel orders were rechecked. Everything moved slower, and in that time, Alira made another decision, a harder one. She would take the matter to the Council herself. She would speak on Ryan's behalf. She would tell them that not all humans were dangerous. She would use his stories, his actions, his courage. She would try, even if they didn't. Listen. The stars above Marin remained quiet as always, but inside the Thaliri station, silence was no longer peace. It was weight. It was pressure. Commander Alira walked through the main hall, her thoughts louder than her steps. Her decision to delay the human's transfer was dangerous, but something inside her said it was right. Captain Ryan sat alone in his room. He knew something had changed. The guards acted different. One offered him warm tea in the morning. Another asked if he needed more light. He noticed the small things, and in those small things he saw a shift. When Alira entered, Ryan stood. "There is news," she said, her voice steady. "I'm listening," he replied. Alira took a slow breath. "I sent a message to the High Council. I spoke about you, about your actions here. I told them you are not a danger." Ryan looked surprised. "What did they say?" "They did not answer yet," she said. "But they will, soon." He nodded. That was brave. Alira looked at him. It was necessary. They sat down. Between them was a thin table. On it lay a device showing a still image of Earth's forest. Green trees, open sky, birds frozen in mid-flight. Alira pointed to the image. "What do you miss most?" Ryan smiled softly. "The sound of wind moving through the trees. It's simple, but it reminds me I'm part of something big." Alira looked at the picture for a long time. "On Meron," she said, "we cut trees only when needed. We do not sit under them. We do not listen to them." "You could," Ryan said. "You just haven't." She thought about that. In the command room, Officer Dren walked in with a file in hand. He was Alira's second in command. Loyal, serious. He had watched the changes closely and did not like them. "The council will not be pleased," he said. "Delaying a transfer without cause is risky." Alira looked at him. "We had technical issues. That is cause enough." Dren frowned. "You are protecting the human," Alira answered calmly. "I am observing what he brings to us. New understanding, new thought." Dren did not argue further, but the look in his eyes showed concern. That evening, a message arrived. The High Council had responded. Alira opened it in her private chamber. The screen glowed blue with official text. "Your report has been received. You are ordered to prepare a full review. The human is still to be transferred within 3 days. No exception." Alira closed the message. Her hand remained on the screen longer than needed. She felt the door closing. The time running out, she called Ryan to her office. "You have 3 days left here," she said. "I see," he replied. She handed him a small tablet. It showed areas of the station where humans had not been allowed before. "I've unlocked these sections for you. Go see them. Learn what you can." Ryan gave a quiet nod. "Why now?" "Because this may be your last chance," she said. Ryan moved through the station the next day, exploring new rooms. He walked through the observation deck, where young Thaliri cadets trained. He stood before the planet maps, studying the lines, drawn by a different history. He passed a lab where 2 officers waved at him with small smiles. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was something else now. He entered the garden dome last. It was quiet. The plants were small but alive. Ryan sat near a blue-leaf tree. The light was soft. A young officer entered and sat near him. "Is it true Earth has trees taller than towers?" the officer asked. "Yes," Ryan said. "And some of them have stood for hundreds of years." The officer looked amazed. "We use plants mostly for medicine, not much else." "On Earth," Ryan said, "we use them for shade, for air, for peace." The officer nodded slowly, then stood and walked away. Ryan stayed, listening to the quiet, letting it speak. Back in the command room, Officer Dren stood with arms crossed. "You've let him touch too much," he said to Alira. "He's not touching, he's teaching," she replied. Dren stepped closer. "You're letting feelings cloud your role." Alira turned to face him. "My role is to lead, not to follow old beliefs without thought." "You sound like him," Dren said. "I am starting to understand him," Alira said. Dren left without another word. That night, Ryan and Alira met again in the common hall. No guards followed. No orders were given. "Do you regret being captured?" she asked. "No," he said. "If I had not crashed, I would never have known you, or your world." Alira looked at him. "I have been taught all my life that humans are a risk, that you speak too much, feel too much, move too fast." "Maybe that is true," Ryan said. "But maybe feeling is strength, not danger." They sat in silence. "You have changed something here," she said. "I didn't mean to," he replied. "Maybe that's why it worked," she said. The next morning, the sky above Marin turned light gray. The transfer ship entered orbit. Its arrival was quiet, but the pressure it brought was strong. Alira stood near the landing dock. Ryan stood beside her, hands behind his back. "This is the end of one path," he said. "It doesn't have to be," she replied. He looked at her. She took a small box from her coat and handed it to him. "What is this?" he asked. "A memory. Stone," she said. "It carries sound. Speak into it before you leave." Rion held it with care. "I will," he said. As the ship lowered, Alira felt a strange stillness in her chest. Not fear, not sadness. Something she had no name for. As Ryan stepped toward the ship, he turned once more and said, "Don't let silence win." Then he entered, and the door closed. The ship carrying Captain Ryan moved slowly through Marin's sky. From the surface, it looked like a silver star sliding across the clouds. Inside the station, the silence left behind by his absence was deep. Alira stood in the control hall, her hands behind her back, eyes fixed on the screen that showed the fading signal of the ship. She should have felt relief. Her report was complete. The prisoner was gone. Order had returned, but her chest felt empty. Officer Dren entered the room and placed a new file on her desk. "From the High Council," he said. "Latest border activity." Alira opened it. Her eyes moved across the lines. Then they stopped. Her fingers pressed harder on the screen. "There are 5 Earth ships near Sector 7, she said. "No weapons, no shields raised." "They are explorers," Dren replied. "But Council sees it as invasion." Alira frowned. "There is no sign of attack." "Council does not wait for attack," he said. "They act before." Alira closed the file. Her mind returned to Ryan's words. About peaceful missions. About learning. About trust. Suddenly, her heart grew heavy. Something was wrong. That evening, Alira entered her quarters and sat at her desk. She reached for the small box Ryan had left behind. It was a Thaleri memory stone. She had given it to him. Now it was back in her hand. She pressed the side gently, and his voice began to play. "If you are hearing this, I am already far. But I want you to know something. I found more truth in your silence than in many words. I hope one day we meet again. Not as prisoner and commander, but as 2 voices trying to understand the same world." His voice stopped. The room stayed still. Alira placed the stone on her table. She looked out at the dark sky. She did not want to just listen. She wanted to act. The next morning, she called a secret meeting with the engineer who once helped. "Delay Ryan's transfer. His name was Kale. He was quiet but clever. Trusted but curious about change. There is something I need," she said. Kale looked up. "Another delay?" "No," Alira replied. "I want access to the inner files of the Council's recent plans, especially about Earth." Kale blinked. "That is not easy. Those files are locked with high-level codes." "I know," she said. "But I also know you can do it." Kale hesitated, then gave a small nod. "I will try." Hours passed. Alira worked on her station tasks, but her mind was waiting. At last, Kale returned, holding a small device. "I found something," he whispered. "You should see it alone." Alira took the device to her chamber. She opened the files. Her eyes scanned through documents, reports, directives. Then she saw it, a hidden plan titled Wavefire. She opened the file. It spoke of a silent strike on Earth, not a war. A quiet removal of communication satellites, disruption of signals, slow pressure, enough to weaken Earth's defenses without showing open war. Alira leaned back in shock. Her people were planning to push Earth down without warning, without cause. Her hands curled into fists. This was not protection. This was control. She called Kale again. "This information must go to Earth," she said. "That is dangerous," Kale replied. "If the Council finds out, we will be marked as traitors." Alira looked into his eyes. "I am ready," she said. "Are you?" Kale took a deep breath, then nodded. Later that night, they entered the deep signal room. It was not used often, only for long-distance data bursts. Kale connected the device to the system. Alira prepared a message. "To any Earth ship receiving this, this is Commander Alira of the Thaleri station on Meron. I have found secret plans from my own leaders. They aim to weaken your system silently. They do not plan for peace. They plan for control. Please be warned. This message is sent with truth and risk." Kale sent the signal. They both stood in silence after the file disappeared into space. There was no going back. 2 days later, the station received a message from the Thaleri Central Command. It was short and clear. "Commander Alira is to report to the capital for questioning. Her command will be reviewed. Control of the station will pass to Officer Dren." Dren stood beside her as she read the message. "You pushed too far," he said. "Now you face the result." Alira looked at him. "The result is worth it." Dren did not reply. Guards arrived. Alira walked forward without fight. Her head was high, her eyes steady. She was not ashamed. As she left, Kale looked down from the upper hall. He sent one more signal into space. A simple one. She spoke the truth. "Please listen." Far away, near the edge of the Thaleri border, an Earth ship received the message. It was small with blue markings. The pilot opened the file. He read the words. Then he opened a channel. "We need to send this to Earth Command, now." The human officer beside him asked, "Who sent it?" The pilot replied, "Someone unexpected." In her holding cell at the Capitol, Alira sat with calm eyes. She was no longer just a commander. She was something more, a quiet voice in a loud empire, and she would not stop now. Inside a cold, gray room in the Thaleri capital, Commander Alira sat on a steel bench. The walls were smooth, no windows, no sounds, just the low hum of energy flowing through the building. She had been in this room for 3 days. No visitors, no answers, no trial. She had expected this. The High Council would not allow someone like her to speak freely, not after sending warnings to Earth, not after breaking silence. Still, she did not regret it. Outside, the sun was rising over the tall towers of the capital city. The sky was a soft blue. Thaleri banners moved gently with the wind. Soldiers walked, in straight lines. Flyers crossed the sky with sharp turns. Everything looked in order. But under that order, cracks had begun to grow. On the lower level of the spaceport, a young officer named Kale moved through the shadows. He had taken great risk by helping Alira. Now he was ready to take one more step. He entered a small storage room and opened a box hidden behind metal crates. Inside was a communicator built by Ryan during his time on the station. It was connected to Earth's frequency line. Kale pressed a few buttons. Then he spoke in a quiet voice. "This is a message for Captain Ryan of Earth. Commander Alira has been arrested. She needs help. If you still believe in her words, please respond." He waited. The screen blinked once, then again. Then it stayed dark. Far away in Earth orbit, Captain Ryan sat in a round meeting room with other officers. The message from Alira had reached Earth Command. Some believed it. Some did not. But Ryan had no doubt. He stood before the leaders and said, "She warned us. She risked everything to stop a silent attack. We owe her our support. One officer leaned forward. "Do you suggest a rescue mission?" "Yes," Ryan said. "That would start a war," the officer replied. "Or it might prevent one," Ryan said. "Because if we do nothing, we show. That truth means nothing. And that silence wins." The room stayed quiet. Then the senior leader stood and said, "You will not take official ships. But if a personal team is formed, we will not stop it." That was enough. 3 days later, a small human vessel flew through deep space. Inside were 4 crew members. Ryan sat in the pilot seat. His hand moved across the screen with calm speed. His eyes were fixed ahead. "We are entering Thaleri. Space," the co-pilot said. "No mistakes," Ryan said. "We are not here to fight. We are here to bring her home." Back on Marin, Officer Dren stood in the command room. He had taken full control of the station. His reports to the council were clean. He said nothing about Kale, nothing about Alira's last acts. To him, the matter was closed, but not everyone agreed. The guards had noticed changes. The engineers whispered during meals. Even the training officers spoke about Alira's kindness. The stories about the human captain had not faded. In fact, they had grown. One night, Kale met with 3 others in a storage room. "Ryan is coming," he said. "Alone?" one asked. "With a small team," Kale said. "They will land far from the main gate. We must guide them in." "You are ready to break orders?" another officer asked. "We are ready to follow what is right," Kale said. They all agreed. At the edge of Marin, the human ship landed behind a hill. Dust rose quietly. No signal was sent. Ryan stepped out first, wearing a simple black suit. His eyes scanned the land. Kale's signal came through a small device. "Move south. Enter through the service path. I will meet you there." Ryan and his team moved fast but carefully. They passed through narrow tunnels and quiet doors. Finally, they reached a hidden stairway. Kale waited at the top. "She is still held in the capital," he said. "Can you get us in?" Ryan asked. "I can," Kale said, "but we must move now. There is little time." In the capital prison, Alira sat on the bench, head resting against the wall. She had not been harmed. But the silence was heavy. It pressed against her like stone. Then she heard a soft sound. The door unlocked. She looked up. Ryan stepped in. For a moment, they both stayed still. Then Alira stood slowly. "You came back," she said. "I never left in spirit," he replied. Kale entered behind him. "We must go now. Before they block the gates." They moved fast through the lower halls. Guards appeared near the outer doors, but they were surprised. Ryan used a light shield to block the path. Kale guided them through an emergency tunnel. They reached the outer field. The ship was waiting. Alira looked back once. The city behind her stood tall and bright, but it no longer felt like home. Ryan touched her shoulder. "We'll return, but not now." They entered the ship. It lifted into the sky. News of Alira's escape spread fast. Some called her a traitor. Others called her brave. The High Council sent warnings, but many officers refused to follow the orders. Something had changed. The Thaleri Empire could no longer hide behind silence. Far above Marin, Alira sat in the ship beside Ryan. She looked out the window. Stars moved slowly across the black sky. "I was trained to fear you," she said. "I was told you would never listen," he replied. They both smiled. Now they were no longer enemies. They were something new. The ship flew silently through the stars. Inside, Commander Alira stood near the front window. Her hands rested behind her back. Her eyes followed the slow movement of distant lights. Earth's direction was ahead. Behind her, the Thaleri Empire was watching and waiting. She knew they would not forget what happened, but she did not feel fear. She felt something new. She felt peace. Captain Ryan entered the room with a tablet in his hand. He smiled when he saw her. "You are quiet today," he said. "I am thinking about what happens next," Alira replied. Rion nodded and walked beside her. "You do not have to face it alone," he said. "I am not used to others standing with me," she said. "Well," Ryan said with a gentle voice. "Get used to it," Alira smiled slightly. For a long time she had carried orders and duty like a weight. Now she was carrying something else, something lighter. A choice, Ryan handed her the tablet. On the screen were images of Earth, reports from human news, and messages from people who had heard her warning. Some were angry, some were confused, but many were thankful. "They are listening," Alira said. "They are," Ryan replied. "Your message reached more people than you think." Alira looked out the window again. "Then we must be careful with our next message." Back on Marin, Officer Dren was standing in the command center. His eyes were sharp. His back was straight. He had just finished speaking with the High Council. They had ordered a full search for Alira and the human ship. Dren had promised results, but he was no longer sure of victory. Reports were coming in. Some Thaleri officers had refused orders. Others had started asking questions. On one small moon, a group of Thaleri workers had even sent a message of support to Earth. Dren clenched his fists. He knew what was happening. Alira had not broken their system with weapons. She had broken it with truth. He turned to his assistant and said, "Find the ship, no matter what it takes." But even as he spoke, doubt grew inside him in a safe zone. Near Earth's edge, Alira and Ryan landed the ship at a hidden base. The place was built deep into a rocky moon. Human officers came to greet them. Among them was General Laura, an old friend of Ryan. She looked at Alira with serious eyes but offered her hand. "You are welcome here," she said. "You took a risk that many would not have taken." Alira shook her hand. "I hope my presence brings help, not danger." "That depends on what you plan to do next," Laura replied. Inside the base, a small group gathered. Some were humans. Some were other species that had also suffered under the Thaleri. They listened as Alira spoke. "I was raised to follow the Thaleri system," she said. "But what I saw changed me. The silence we live in, the secrets we hide, they are not strength. They are fear. And fear should not lead our people." Her words reached the room like quiet fire. One officer from a desert world stood and said, "Then what do you suggest we do?" Alira paused before answering. "We build something new, a voice that speaks truth, a place where humans, Thaleri, and others can share freely. No more hidden attacks, no more controlled minds, only open eyes, Young human engineer said. "That sounds impossible." Alira looked at Ryan, then back at the group. "So did peace between us," she said. "And yet, here we are." In the weeks that followed, small changes began across different worlds. Messages were sent. Quiet meetings were held. A name started to spread across space unity. Watch It was not a government, not a rebellion. It was a bridge. Built by those who believed truth could win without war, Alira became a voice for the Watch. She shared her story, not with anger, but with hope. Ryan stood beside her, not as a shield, but as a partner. Together, they moved from system to system, meeting leaders, calming fears, and building trust. Slowly, the seeds of something new began to grow. But not everyone welcomed the change on Marin. Dren stood before the council again. He presented a list of officers who had joined the Unity Watch. The council was silent. Finally, one elder said, "Perhaps it is time we listen." Dren's face tightened. "She betrayed us. Or perhaps she showed us a truth we refused to see." The elder replied. Dren left the room without another word. His power was fading. The system he protected was no longer safe from questions. Months passed. Then a year Alira stood on a small green world beside a human school. Children from different planets sat together, learning side by side. She watched them with quiet joy. Ryan joined her with 2 cups of warm drink. "They are the future." He said, "Yes," Alira said. "And they will write a story better than ours." Ryan looked at her. "We wrote the first chapter. That matters too." Alira nodded. "Then let us keep writing. Together." They stood side by side, looking out at the children, the trees, and the sky. No walls, no guards, no fear. The war that never started had saved many, and the story of a human captain and a Thaleri commander had become more than history. It had become hope.